Hello, I'm Teacher Robin. Welcome to another live streaming class. Today we're going to be talking about defining versus non-defining relative clauses. So if you want to learn more about this topic, keep watching. And if you want to participate during the class, if you have a question or something you want to add, you can write in the comments, okay? And I'll be checking your comments throughout the class. So let's get started with our topic for today. First, let's define what is a relative clause, okay? A relative clause adds relatively important information about the subject or object of the sentence. It is usually placed immediately after the noun to which they refer, and it is introduced by a relative pronoun or adverb. Okay, so we'll start with defining relative clauses. Okay, what does a defining relative clause mean? A defining relative clause provides information that is indispensable, essential to identify the subject or object of the sentence. Okay, you need this information in the sentence. Without this clause, the sentence completely changes its meaning. Okay, it always comes immediately after the subject or the object and is introduced by a relative pronoun. All right, so let's see some examples. Let's start with the relative clause of the subject. So if the subject is a person, then we use the relative clauses who or that. If the subject is a thing, we can use the relative clauses which or also that. Okay, for example, the man who is talking to Anne is my math teacher. The book, which was published last year, would be perfect for your exam. So can you see how this information within the clause is essential? Because here we don't know which man the person is talking about unless we say who is talking to Anne. Otherwise, it could be any man. We don't know. And the same goes for the book. The book which was published last year. So this gives you specific information that is essential to understand the rest of the sentence. Okay, so what if the relative clause is of the object? Okay, so if the person is the object, if the object is a person, then we use who, whom, or that. If it is a thing, we use which or that. For example, the girl who you met this morning is my cousin. The book which I am reading is absolutely wonderful. Okay, so here we have which, so followed by an object. That is why we need to use this, this relative clause. Okay, now let's move on to possessive relative clause. Okay, in the possessive we use the relative clause whose. Okay, note W-H-O-S-E, not apostrophe S, whose. All right, let's see an example. I have a friend whose dog won a prize in a competition. Okay, so you're describing this friend and the dog belongs to the friend, so you use this possessive relative clause. All right, there is an exception. When the subject to the relative clause is also the object of the sentence, the relative pronoun may be omitted. Okay, so you can use it in the sentence or not. So let's see an example here. She is the girl he was talking about. This is the skirt I bought last week. So here we've removed the relative pronoun. So it could be this is the girl who he was talking to, or this is the skirt that I bought last week. But because the subject and the object are the same, we do not need to include the relative pronoun. Okay, so I see some people are joining us today. Atef, Paul, Adil, and Alonzo. So thank you for joining. I hope that you are enjoying the class. Someone asks, how can I watch the class with subtitles? So the thing about live streaming is that it is live, so we cannot include subtitles. But hopefully, even if you don't understand everything in the class, you can pick up a little bit. And remember, these videos, when they are finished, will go to our video section of our Facebook page. So there you can find all of our previous videos if you want to watch them again. Okay, someone asked, why aren't we using whom? I'll get to that later because we have to go back. So at the end of the class, I will explain that. Okay, so now let's talk about non-defining relative clauses. So remember, we said that defining relative clauses are essential to maintain the meaning of the sentence. So non-defining clauses provide additional information about the subject or the object of the sentence, but it is not essential, to identify the subject or the object. It does not change the meaning of the sentence. So you can include it, it's additional information, but it's not, you can still understand the meaning without it. And we use these relative pronouns separated by commas. So that's one way that you know that it's non-defining, is that you'll find it separated by commas. So let's look at some examples. Okay, relative clause of the subject. If the subject is a person, we use who. If the subject is a thing, we use which. For example, Mary, who was my classmate, graduated last year. Okay, so here we could also say Mary graduated last year. We still understand the meaning, but here we add additional information. She happens to be this person's classmate. So we say, oh, it's interesting, but I understand the sentence if we exclude this information as well. Okay, relative clause of the object. If the object is a person, we use the pronouns who or whom. If the object is a thing, we use the pronoun which. For example, Dr. Smith, who I consider to be a very professional person, is retired now. So this extra information is expressing your personal opinion about this person. So actually we don't necessarily need it in the sentence. We could say Dr. Smith is retired now, and maybe it doesn't matter how you feel about this person. So depending on who you're talking to, we can include this information, or you can leave it out. Okay, possessive relative clause. So we use, again, whose. For example, Judy, whose children are still going to school, is a young and dynamic lady. So here, this information about Judy's children is not essential to maintain the meaning of the sentence. We could say, Judy is a young and dynamic lady. And also, she has children who are still going to school. So this information is kind of additional. Okay. Note, in a non-defining clause, the relative pronoun must always be used. So here we cannot eliminate it. With non-defining, you have to keep it in the sentence. And it is not possible to use the relative pronoun that in a non-defining clause. Okay, so you would never see comma that. Okay, so that's always going to go with defining clauses. All right, let's see a comparison here just to show you how important, or the difference between defining and non-defining. Here we have the same sentence, but the clause is used differently. For example, if this sentence were using a defining clause, Dario's sister who works at the GP is named Gloria. Okay, so in this case, we can infer that Dario has more than one sister. So which sister are we talking about? The one who works at the GP. Okay? If we were using this as a non-defining clause, we could separate it with commas. We could say Dario's sister, who works at the GP, is named Gloria. So in this case, we assume that Dario only has one sister, and this sister's name is Gloria. So we could also say Dario's sister is named Gloria, and here we add the additional information that she works at the GP. Okay. So now that we have reviewed defining versus non-defining clauses, I'm going to ask you to participate in the comments. I have 2 questions for you, or 2 examples that I want you to practice. So write a sentence using a defining relative clause and write a sentence using a non-defining relative clause. So it could be something similar to what I just showed you, where it's the same example, but the clause changes whether you put commas or not, for something like that, or you could choose 2 completely different sentences. Okay, so as you're doing that, let me just tell you a little bit about our course here at ABBA. We have a complete course from beginners to business level. Our course has 144 units. Each unit features a short film, a video class explaining the grammar, and then exercises for you to practice all of your skills: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So if you want more information about our course, ABBA English, you can visit abbaenglish.com, and there you can subscribe as a premium or a free student. So you'll find more information on our website. In addition to our course, we have many other resources for free that you can use, like our blog, our ABBA journal. There you can find articles about grammar, culture, English for business, travel, so all kinds of information you might want to look up. And we are also active on all of the social media networks, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. So I encourage you to check those out if you haven't already. Okay, oh, sorry. I need to answer your questions now. So someone asked about the difference between who and whom. Okay, so we use whom when someone is receiving an action. So for example, to whom did you give a book? I gave the book to Paul, for example, okay? So we only use it when the person is receiving an action. Otherwise, if you're just describing a person, the person who I gave the book to is Paul. The person to whom I gave the book is Paul. So can you see the difference? Hopefully that's a little clearer now. No, okay, Freeman has put an example. The girl whom you met this morning is my cousin. No, here we would say the girl who you met this morning. Okay, so if you're describing, we use who. If you're talking about receiving an action, we use whom. All right, Anang says, insightful lesson. Can you make it available for us in PowerPoint? Okay, we will keep that in mind for the future. Good suggestion. Okay, as more people are writing comments, I want to tell you about next week's class. We're going to be talking about phrasal verbs for studying. So there are hundreds and hundreds of phrasal verbs in the English language, and the best thing to do is to memorize them a few at a time. So what we've done in some of our previous live streaming classes is to group them according to the context or the subject. So we've done phrasal verbs at the office, phrasal verbs for business, etc. So next week we're going to be talking about phrasal verbs for studying. All right, let me check a few more comments before we finish the class. Darwin and Encarnacion says, shout out to me. Hello, thank you for joining. I hope that this class has been useful for you. I hope you learned something today. Please feel free to write suggestions as we are in the new year, January. We would love to hear your suggestions for future classes. So please, if there's something that we haven't done or that you would like to review, please let us know in the comments as well. And if I didn't answer your question live, I will be checking the comments later on today, so please feel free to keep writing, practicing those examples. Write an example of a defining and a non-defining clause. Okay, so thank you again for joining. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.